serious? Ooh. Ready to go live and action. So this is a little bit different for Angie and I. My name is Joe Harford. Her name is Angie Singer Keating. Now she's going to be funny that, oh, I can't hear you.
Because she's funny. I was trying to make you think I couldn't hear you.
Of course you were. But Angie has agreed to reverse roles with me. Normally, I'm the one that does all this homework to interview her. Now she's done all this homework not to interview me. But really the difference is also this is about Farming to Freedom, a nonprofit that I started a couple of years ago. And the fact that both my wife and Angie are incredible supporters of that. I'm very grateful. And Angie is going to put me under the microscope because she wants to know more about why is April Second Chance Month? What does that mean? And more importantly, what exactly do you do in Farming to Freedom? So I'm going to turn it over to Angie.
I mean, first of all, I am really interested. I mean, is there a specific reason why April is Second Chance Month?
You know, I probably should have researched that question since I teed that up for you, but I can't tell you exactly why April is designated that way. I can tell you about second chance employment. I can tell you about what we call also fair chance employment, but not necessarily why April was chosen. So that's probably a bad on my part.
Well, I mean, right off the bat, and I should know more about this than I do, but where does the name Farming to Freedom come from? And after a 2-decade history of having to explain where the name Reclamere came from, could you not have chosen a name that was more self-explanatory for your latest endeavor?
Sure. And you're not the only person who says that to me. So you can join the crowd. So Farming to Freedom. First of all, Farming to Freedom is a nonprofit that is intended to work with men and women that are either incarcerated currently or have been incarcerated in the past and are really basically sick and tired and want to break the cycle of repeat offenses. They want their lives back. They want to change outcomes, and they're really looking for a better result. That's the most straightforward way that I can explain it to you. What men and women will often tell me is that they have gotten to a point they just want to be done. Where does the name come from? So I guess it goes back almost 10 years ago. I was befriended. I live in Huntington County. I live in a very rural part of Pennsylvania. And I was befriended by a local farmer who has been in farming all of his life. And what I learned about agriculture is not the things that you hear today about, you should know where your food comes from. But farmers are just different types of people, and the challenges that they're faced with and the stamina that they have. And also the fact that I like the way that they view work. I like the way that they view how they're going to deal with adversity. Imagine that your job is to plant seeds and then sit back and go, oh my gosh, I hope it rains. Or, oh my gosh, I hope it doesn't rain too much. Or, oh my gosh, when is it going to rain? That's a different kind of business model. And so that kind of resolve was interesting to me. The number two, because I believe in a second chance. And the reason why I believe in a second chance is because people have given them to me. And quite frankly, when I didn't deserve them. I've gotten second chances from my family. I've gotten second chances from you. I've gotten second chances from my wife and my friends. And like I said, growing up, I was kind of a jerk. I really didn't deserve a second chance. And then freedom to be able to get your life back, freedom to be able to get up when you want to get up and go get a job that you want to get. And that is not always the case, that people have that ability, right? So Farming to Freedom is intended to be a metaphor to say to those that are in the program, we want to help you farm for your second chances at freedom, and to be able to help them identify what it is that they want to be doing. Because in many cases, people aren't self-aware. Like, they don't know what they want to be doing. In the grace of technology, my friend Deborah Conrad, oh my God, can you see that?
I do. That's fantastic.
Deborah Conrad, I've got to put a plug in for her, is one of the coolest people that I know. I know a lot of cool people, but she's one of the coolest people that I know. She was instrumental in helping me get my certification for the entrepreneurial mindset profile as a practitioner. She's in the St. Petersburg, St. Pete's Beach area in Florida, and just a super, super cool person. So thank you so much for bailing me out, Deborah, when you saw that I was choking on an answer. But no, if you ever get a chance to meet her, Angie, you'll love her. She's really, really cool.
Well, if there's one thing I know about you, is you surround yourself with really smart, strong women. The one thing I know about you is you surround yourself with really smart, strong women. So I am sure that I would love Deborah. Well, coming from, as you know, farm family, both sides, my mom's side, my dad's side. So what you're really talking about when you're talking about farming is you're talking about resilience. You're talking about rolling with the punches, being able to dust yourself off and get back up. And so I get it. That makes sense to me. I think one of the challenging things for a lot of people is, does everybody deserve a second chance? And if you're thinking about it, I think about it in terms of being an employer. Maybe there's some people I would be terrified to have work for me. Maybe they did things that are just so heinous. Like, I don't understand. Does just anybody get to go through Farming to Freedom? How do you decide who gets to do it, and why should they be allowed to do it?
So, as has been historically what occurs, my younger sister has taken multiple questions and strung them all together. So I'm going to do my best as also a practicing public servant to kind of flesh those out for you. So the first question is, does everybody deserve a second chance? And philosophically, and from my personal perspective, yes, they do. I believe that. Now, let me say this to you, though. 10 years ago, I didn't believe that. 5 years ago, I wasn't really sure. It wasn't until I took the time, the effort, and the energy as a part of doctoral research to get my PhD that I immersed myself into something that I had no experience with, none whatsoever. I mean, I'm a 6'2" white guy from the suburbs of Philadelphia. What do I know about mass incarceration? Zero. I have family members that have been in the system. I still have a family member that's in the system. I've had friends that were in the system, but I didn't know anything about it. And so I took on the typical Reagan Republican mentality, which is, you got to be hard on crime, lock them up and put them away. Okay. Well, as you start to find out about it, you realize the economic impact, the human impact, and also the impact on the community. So philosophically, I agree that everyone deserves a second chance. However, now you've got to talk about the practicality. And the practicality is, like in our situation, there are certain offenses that, based on our business model and also our accreditation in trade associations, we can't let them in the door. So there are going to be certain instances where they're going to be precluded from working here. Now, let me say this to you. The challenge becomes, when they do the same thing over and over and over again. It's kind of like the argument of, oh my gosh, I'm an EMT and I was out there and this is the third time tonight that I've smacked this person in the leg with Narcan. Just let them die. That's a separate and distinct conversation because there's some frustration there. How do people get involved with Farming to Freedom? How do they qualify? We're fortunate. We work directly with the Huntington County Probation Office, and they do a really great job helping us identify those candidates that would be good participants in the program. We look for individuals.
So what makes somebody a good candidate?
First and foremost, we risk rank them based on, and it's all about ranking as it pertains to likelihood of recidivating. So we've got low, medium, and high.
Okay.
And each one of those categories also has a different level of effort and work that you're going to have to do in order to help them to be successful. So typically what we try to do is we try to get a mix of low and medium participants into the class. And this is the second time that we're going to be running a cohort on the outside. So we've identified about 15 participants right now. So that's the way that they qualify to get in the program. They're invited. It's completely and totally voluntary. It's not required. It's not a court order. I don't think it should be a court order, because I think when you're forced to do something, it's kind of like when you got to go to goofball class because you got too many points on your license. It's like it's a drag. You're angry that you're there. Is it really something that? No, I personally believe it should be voluntary, and there are people that fall out of the program. They'll go halfway through or what have you, and for whatever reason they'll drop out. Mm-hmm. So, but that's kind of like my philosophy about second chances and how they get in the program, et cetera.
Well, Huntington County doesn't have a lot of jobs, though. So is it fair? Is it fair that people with felonies, like, is there any logic that maybe people with a felony are going to get a job over like the good people of Huntington County? Is that fair?
Sure. Well, so I think, fair to who? Fair to what? Fair by how? Great question. Mm-hmm. I've heard that on more than one occasion. So let's take a look at the broader problem. The broader problem is that we do have an issue in Huntington County with available jobs. I will simply say this to you. Having lived there for almost 25 years, in recent years, the last 5, I have not gone into any business, and I mean any business in Huntington County, including a bank, including the grocery store, and including Ace Hardware, where there's not a sign up that says help wanted. If you live in Huntington County and you have a reasonable, reliable means of transportation, there's a job for you. Now, it may not be your forever job. It may not be the job that you're going to be able to save up money and go to Myrtle Beach for a week with your family, but there's a job. So that I'm hoping that answers the question about the good people.
Yeah.
So is it fair? We have approximately 700 people in Huntington County on supervision. And what we know to be true is this. If people coming out of jail or prison can't get a reliable job and a safe place to live, their likelihood of recidivating or going back to prison grows exponentially. We know that. So from my perspective as a taxpayer and as a business owner and as a community member, I want those people, good or bad, to get a job, because if not, they're just simply going to stay in the cycle. They're going to stay in the system. Now, there's an element that no one wants to talk about, which is we have a major issue with mental health in prisons and jails that's not being addressed. So that adds to the complexity of the problem. But to your question, yes, I think it's fair. I think it's part of how the community can really be healthy. I would much rather be in a situation where someone has a job at the Ace Hardware and they're living in an apartment, and they're paying their bills, or they live in a house and they're paying their taxes, than be in a system where they're locked up in jail. Call me crazy, but I would much rather the people I've worked with, I would much rather that they're connected with their family and that they're productive parts of society than just simply being a burden to the taxpayer. And quite frankly, they're not doing any good for themselves.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think maybe there are some economic incentives. Let's be honest, you and I are employers. And sometimes when I hear employers talk about, there's nobody good out there, nobody wants to work. And I start asking them, what's your starting pay? Like, that's like, you still qualify for food stamps with what they're paying. Or there's someone they're an employer who's paying people under the table. And so I think maybe there's a little bit sometimes of an economic incentive. If you're going to pay someone who's on parole under the table, that's a vulnerable person. As an employer, you can get away with doing a whole lot of bad things to them because what is their alternative? And are they going to end up back in jail? So I guess one of the things I've learned from you in watching your work, not just with Farming to Freedom, but before that, when you were working on your PhD, is this is really complicated. Like, anybody that thinks that whether it's lock them up and throw away the key, whether it's get out and who cares, like, it's really complicated. And so I'm just super grateful that there are people like you and Karen in the world that want to take the time, spend the time to get to know people and understand the complexities. One of the things that really jumps out to me every time I talk to you is the amount of childhood trauma that it sounds like every one of these people have experienced. And so when I kind of think back to that scary ex-con as a little boy, it kind of also helps me refocus on the fact that that little boy deserved a second chance. That little boy deserved third, fourth, fifth, and sixth chances because, like, they really had it awful and terrible. And absolutely, there's that whole argument of, well, I've had it terrible. You've had it terrible. We both had trauma. We didn't turn out that way. But a lot of people don't turn out okay. And taking the time to really get through and help with that trauma to break that cycle and build something better for the community, it's hard work. And I give you all the credit in the world for wanting to get in the trenches and do that really, really hard work with some people that have really been traumatized.
I appreciate that, but the hard work is really done by the participant, because they have to, first and foremost, they have to recognize that change is required. They have to then go on a personal journey of being able to deal with all of the criminogenic factors that go into why they got there to begin with. And that is a major mindset shift. And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's hard. We've talked about this on a number of occasions. I currently, and I think probably for the rest of my life, will struggle with how do I personally manage food and alcohol. And although I never got locked up because I stole food because I'm a binge eater, or I was a drunk driver and I got busted, the fact of the matter is I have my own mindset shift that I have to go through, and it's hard. It is very hard. Now imagine, okay, and I grew up with some childhood trauma, but we've heard stories and worked with people where young boys and young girls were raped on a regular basis. They were exposed to drugs. They were exposed to physical violence. They were exposed to childhood bullying and just mental terror. Um, and so, that's a difficult place for somebody to be. And I've said this to people that have said to me, I pulled myself up by my bootstraps, and they ought to be able to do the same thing. Well, okay, you know what? Kudos for you. I'm really proud that you were able to do that. But what happens when you can't even see the bootstrap, or you don't even know what a boot looks like?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a reality there. And, this is the place where when we start to have this conversation, people are like, oh my gosh, he burned his Republican card. He's no longer a conservative. Now he's a lunatic. He's whatever. Okay. Time out. If there's any subject, societal challenge that we have today that has gained more support on both sides of the aisle, both in state government, state legislature, and at the national level in Washington, D.C., it has been this whole issue about what are we going to do with this population of about 2 million people that we got locked up. You can have the economic conversation, you can have the society conversation, but it will come down the middle of the aisle, and people on both sides will have that conversation. So I would really like to put the political nonsense aside and say we have a societal challenge that we've got to do something about. And from my perspective, I've met some really super intelligent people in prison. Some of them have gotten out and started their own businesses. Some of them have gotten out and they have become great employees. And a guy that I just worked with who got out a couple months ago, they just issued a bench warrant for his arrest. So we have failure too. But that doesn't mean that you just, again, throw away the key and forget about him. You talk about the complexity of the problem. What I don't want to forget about is the victim.
Mm-hmm.
We can't forget about the victim of the crime because they have just as much in this equation of complexity that the person who's locked up for that crime has. And we can't ever just simply, push them aside and not be worried about their concerns or their fear or their damage that was done to them. So you're right. It is a complex problem. But you know what? Going to the moon and coming back safely was a complex problem.
That didn't happen.
Okay. Shooting this little rocket ship to Mars and beep, 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 sending back some pictures from Mars was a complex problem. So we've already demonstrated that we can deal with complex problems. It's whether or not people are willing to understand it, become aware of it. And listen, I'm not expecting everybody to jump on the Farming to Freedom bandwagon, although I think that would be great. What I am just simply saying is let's just have a conversation. We can still end the conversation. You say, you know what? I still think that you should lock them up and throw away the key. Okay, but at least have the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not having a conversation to change your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a conversation to make you aware of something that up until 5 years ago, I had no idea what this thing called mass incarceration was about, and what it cost and what it meant to keep. I had no idea. Mm-hmm. Now I'm a lot more aware. And for me personally, it became another part of what my purpose and mission is in life is to say, if I can keep one person from ever going back to jail again, cool. I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I think that it's a shame that societal issues like this today get viewed through a political lens, because there is nothing political, in my opinion, about valuing another human being. And whether that value is that you want them to be contributing, tax-paying members of society, or that value is you're a raging liberal who believes in the, the value of every single person, and you want everybody to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. Regardless of your underlying reason, we can all agree that we don't just throw human beings away. And I think that everybody should be willing to sit down and have those conversations. I know I've learned an incredible amount from you. I've also watched as you've learned an incredible amount. I saw you come into my office and you were very upset because there were, I believe it was a homeless mother and daughter in Huntingdon, back when we had like minus 10, 12, minus 12 degree weather. Yeah. And you were so upset about that to the point that you wanted to take your credit card and go to a hotel and, get them housing. And from my time working with family services, I knew there were some complexities around that, what do you do if they have mental health problems and one of them has a breakdown and decides to trash the entire room? Is your credit limit high enough? There are all kinds of factors that went into it. But I watched you then take those questions I asked you. You then reached out and found resources and helped those people in a way that didn't put yourself at risk, or your credit rating for that matter. And I wish more people, would be that way. One of the things that's so important for people is that they have a place to take a shower. Okay, maybe your church is worried that you don't want to open the doors for people to sleep there overnight. But maybe people could get a shower once a week so that they were clean when they went to a job interview. Like, everybody can do something, you know?
Sure.
And if every single person did just a little bit, how much better it could be for everybody. So under that, on that subject, what is the help that people can give Farming to Freedom? How can they help Farming to Freedom? In addition to the obvious, which is donations and financial support, how else can they get involved and help out?
Sure. So, great tee up. Thank you so much. We need people that want to volunteer their time either for the delivery of programming, because we're using an evidence-based curriculum from a very good friend of mine, Dr. Barry George, in Miami, Florida. Super cool guy. In fact, I'll be meeting with him on Friday of this week. And you don't have to do all 12 weeks, but maybe you simply come in and you share a particular life skill with participants. You'd be surprised the number of people that we work with that do not understand basic financial literacy. And I'm not talking about financial planning. I'm talking about basic financial literacy. How much money an hour? What are you going to get a week? What are you going to keep? And how are you going to deal with all your bills? And people might say, oh, they learn that in school. No, they don't. No, they don't. Now, we passed legislation here in Pennsylvania to make that so, but for those people that are currently in the system, no, they don't. And oh, by the way, if they lived in poverty all of their life, where did they learn financial literacy? That's right, they didn't. Right. So, or you may be someone that has experience in job interviewing or job coaching, and you want to be able to run a session on how to get ready for a job interview. You may be somebody who is a retired counselor, and your specialty may be, how do we deal with anger management? There is a vast population of men and women that are currently in jail or out that have major anger management issues. And so maybe you could run a session there. So program participants and supporting them. The other area that we need help in is, it's not like you go for 12 weeks and then you're cured and everything's good. No, we need to be able to create an ecosystem of people that go into the program, they come out of the program, and they spend time with life coaches. What is a life coach? A life coach is somebody where Angie's my life coach. Once a week, we get coffee, we have a conversation, and I bring her up to speed on this is how my job search is going. This is what's going on with my girlfriend. Oh my gosh, I just found out that we're pregnant. Oh my gosh, my dog got run over. Oh my gosh, I failed a urine test, whatever. And be that person that you can spend a half an hour or even an hour of your week with to just simply have a conversation and show interest. One of the most interesting dynamics in human beings is not that you have to give someone an answer, but give them your time. We often, in talking with men and women, find out that when they were smaller, meaning when they were children, they were viewed as a nuisance. Their parents never gave them time. There was no fishing trips. There was no Barbie parties. There was none of that. It was like, you know what? I got your mom knocked up, and now you're my kid, and I got to deal with you. Rah, rah, rah. That's a great environment to live in, right? So now you expect them to be an adult and like just snap out of that. It doesn't happen. So imagine, you've got somebody who has an active interest. I have 4 people that throughout the week, every week, get a random text from me, and they all respond back. And it doesn't take me, I'm challenged by using my phone, as you know, but at the end of the day, we're talking about seconds out of my life. Are you freaking kidding me? Like, take the time. So people that want to deliver programming, people that want to be a life coach, people that just simply want to know more about the program, like how does it work and why does it matter? Having those conversations. And of course, I've been very blessed. We've been very blessed. The Reclamier employees made a great donation to Farming to Freedom at Christmas last year. You made a wonderful donation. Friends like John Barry and others have made a donation. Reclamier is getting ready to make another donation. So, and I'm not being arrogant to say that money is not an issue, because money is always an issue in a nonprofit. But what I am saying is that, we're off to a really good start. Now what we need to have a number of volunteers that just simply want to know more, because they may sit down and have that conversation over a cup of coffee and be like, hey, you know what, dude, I'm happy to give you a check for $100, but this is not for me. Okay, that's cool. I'll take your $100 and I'm glad we had a cup of coffee together. Or like my friend Jim Sharrock, who lives in Huntington, he is a co-facilitator with me. Jim's gone into jail with me. We're now going to be starting the second cohort on May 6th at the Stone Church in Huntington. So yeah, there's a lot of things that people can do. I think reaching out and asking the question, like, how can I be involved and what can I be doing? Would love to have that conversation with people.
That's fantastic. And I think, I think on an upcoming episode, I think you're going to talk to maybe a CPA or someone about the whole program we have here in Pennsylvania, where businesses can direct their tax dollars to nonprofits. That's something Reclamier's been doing for years.
Like you just put a little teaser spoiler alert in there. That was really good. Like, you're doing really well.
Hey, I want to be the next Oprah, I want to ask engaging questions, but
I'm okay with that.
But yeah, I didn't know that existed. We're going to pay our taxes anyway. So if we can then turn around and direct those dollars to something that is meaningful to us, and we've been in business 23 years. Employees have given us everything at Christmas from gift cards for me to get my hair done and Omaha steaks and whatever. And, this year we said, like, you and I are so fortunate. We have everything that we could ever want. And we said, please, if you want to give anything, then give in our name to, for me, it was Family Services of Blair County. And for you, it was Farming to Freedom. And they gave very generously. Our employees are amazing. And so those are just all kinds of other little ways that you can do stuff. I'll be honest. I'm scared to have closer than like an arm's length involvement with Farming to Freedom, because I'm afraid I will get emotionally attached. And when someone calls me and says I'm back in jail, like, I'll be crushed. I'll be devastated. Or I'll have like every one of them, that doesn't have a home in my basement. We'll be having Farming to Freedom sleepovers all the time because people don't have a place to live, or they need daycare. I don't know. I just I'm that person that couldn't work at the shelter because I'll bring all the dogs home. And so for me, just financially being able to support you is the best way that I know that I can help out. And I know there are other people out there, whether you want to, I'm not too proud to admit it. I just get too emotionally wrapped up in stuff, and I don't have that emotional fortitude to be able to do what's best for the person. And sometimes that means you're not able to bring every puppy home,
Yeah.
So that would be a tough part.
You make a really good point. I mean, when I found out, it is really hard. I mean, imagine.
I heard it in your voice. I heard how sad you were when you told me about the person that the bench warrant was out. I heard the sadness and disappointment in your voice. You took that incredibly personally and very seriously. So that had to be very tough for you. I know how emotionally invested you are in every one of these people.
It was. I think what gets me through it is, there is a reality that you can only do so much. You do the best you possibly can, and you just got to kind of, move on from there. We know from research what works. We know from research what doesn't work. So this is not a, just everything run by heartstrings and drama and emotion. We know what works for men doesn't necessarily work for women. In fact, it doesn't. We know what works for Caucasian males is different than Latino males. Like there is a plethora of data that we have. The challenge, and this is where the people that are watching may disconnect and get angry, but I'm just going to say it. What we have is a lack of proper funding to rehabilitate criminals. Because right now what we do is we lock up criminals. There is no rehabilitation. There just isn't. We have prisons that in some cases are overpopulated. We have corrections officers whose lives are at risk because they're understaffed and overutilized. We have administrators that are not properly supported by their state legislatures. And, somebody in the background is saying, oh my gosh, you want more money? I do want more money. Absolutely, I want more money. Because if you're going to lock somebody up, okay, cool. Like, for whatever reason, you want to lock them up, okay. When you lock someone up, and they become institutionalized, your institution has negatively affected their life. And so as a human being, they deserve not only a roof and clothes and a place to sleep and food, but some form of rehabilitation that's going to properly return them to society so that they don't come back. So right now, on average, we spend about $45,000 a year to lock somebody up. I made this comment in a public meeting last week. It went over like a lead balloon. And so I'll say it on the internet. If you're spending $45,000 a year to lock somebody up and you want to rehabilitate them and you don't want them to come back, you better commit another $30,000 to $35,000 a year. Oh my gosh, where's that money going to come from? Taxpayers, whatever. Taxpayers are paying it already. Taxpayers are paying it already because 63% of people that get out of prison are back in prison in 3 years. You're paying for it already. Do the math, remove the drama, remove the emotion and the silliness, and let's walk through the mathematical equation. But people don't like that answer because we've had nonprofits around dealing with this issue for a long time. Churches, civic organizations, you name it, we got it. And guess what? It's still 63%. So something ain't right. Well, what's not right is when they go in and they get warehoused and they're not being rehabilitated and there's no transition to society and then there's no aftercare and wraparound services, guess what happens? They go back to jail. Hello. It's not rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I'm not real happy about what I view as the solution, but that's what I view as the solution. So for me, I live in Huntington County. There are 700 people that are on supervision. We've got about 40 some odd males that are in jail today in our county jail. We do not have a female dormitory, so all of the females are shipped out to a wide variety of other counties, by the way, at a huge expense. We need a new jail in Huntington County. Nobody wants to hear that story and that cost. I get it, but we do. So my personal focus is, what can I do for the 700 people, if they want to be involved in Farming to Freedom, to make sure that if you don't have a job, let's get you a job. If you don't have a place to live, let's get you a place to live. If you need drug and alcohol counseling, let's get you drug and alcohol counseling. If you need to make sure that you're not in a battered situation, let's keep you out of a battered situation. And at the other side of the equal sign is make sure you don't go back to jail. And if we can only ever accomplish that in Huntington County, I'm cool with that. I'm really cool with that. But if you ever want to have the bigger conversation, you got to be ready for the expense of the bigger conversation.
Well, the thing that you said about women really breaks my heart, because I know from the work that I've done with family services that that's having, many of those women have children. And if they're being shipped an hour away, 2 hours away, probably coming from a family that's already economically challenged, there are children that are not getting to see their mother. And, we know from data that even a poor mother is better than no mother. And that is just setting another generation up of trauma. The other thing is that, so many women are in prison because of the poor choices in men that they have made, again, coming from childhood trauma that led them into the situations that they're in. So it's really heartbreaking for me. And not that anyone coming out of prison has it easy, but I think on the scale of difficulty, I think women coming out of Huntington County's correctional facilities have it especially hard without that family support nearby for visits, without access to their children. It just has to be really, really, really horrific.
It is. So because you and I have a company to run, if you want to ask me one more question and then we can wrap it up, I'm cool with that. Or not. It's up to you.
Where do you see Farming to Freedom in 5 years?
Wow. Okay. So Farming to Freedom in 5 years from now. So when we get to April of 29, we will have a program that is running all three components, which is Kickstart Academy, which is the work done inside county jail or state prison. We'll have Transformation Academy operating, which is on the outside when you're on probation or parole. And we'll have Evolution Academy, which will be for those participants that have demonstrated the wherewithal and ability to spin up their own business, whether it's a side hustle or it's an actual entrepreneurial startup. We will have a full-time executive director that will be running the organization. That will not be me. I do not want to be the executive director of Farming to Freedom. And for another episode, I'll tell you why. And we'll also have a residential component of Farming to Freedom for both men and women, meaning whether we own residential properties that are really a transition house or a group home where they will live upon release for some predetermined amount of time, or going out on a limb, because I think it would be cool, owning a 150-acre farm. There's a really great farm called Benevolence Farm in Baker, North Carolina. Phenomenal model. I believe they're only on 13 acres. And I just think that for me personally, that brings it full circle with Farming to Freedom. But more importantly, again, it gives people an opportunity to have that transition housing in a safe environment. And if you've ever worked on a farm, which you have, it ain't easy work. So that element of working in that environment, I think, would be great for participants. So programming, fully engaged, staffing, fully engaged, and then a residential program, which is under monitoring and full management.
Well, 23 years ago, you asked me to be your business partner, and I said yes because despite the fact that most startup businesses fail, I knew that when Joe Harford decides to do something, he's not stopping until he's succeeded. And that's why I said yes. And so with that kind of a vision and you being you, I have absolutely no doubt that you will get where you're going with that vision, without a doubt.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, super kudos.
And with your wife by your side, because you have become an incredible human since she came into your life. I have absolutely no doubt that you today have a partner that will share that vision with you and be by your side to get you there. So you could not be set up better for success.
I'm very fortunate, as you mentioned earlier, about having strong women in my life. So with my mother passing in 20, my wife took on that role at home. So Karen is always the one who's more than willing to kick me in my pants so that I don't bring home all the strays. And then when I get crazy at work, my little sister, who's down the hallway that way, keeps me on the straight and narrow as well. So I would just simply say thank you. But more importantly, I think for anyone, you have to find out what's your mission, what's your passion, what really matters to you. The furthest thing from cybersecurity and running a business is prison work, in my opinion. And you get there by taking a personal journey. You get there by being introspective. You get there by being self-aware. And you also get there by realizing that, you know what, you're right. You and I have a really blessed life. And I just think that at some point in your life, you get the opportunity to give back. This is my opportunity to give back. And it's rewarding because it's not about giving people the answer, because we're not giving anybody an answer. We're just helping somebody get along and find the answer on their own. And that's the cool part. So thank you for being the second guest interviewer on Farming to Freedom. You did a really great job. You may get invited back for another appearance.
Okay.
And if anyone has any questions, obviously they can reach out to farming2freedom.org, our website, and all the contact information that they would need is there. And again, Angie, I just wanted to say thank you.
You are most welcome. Thank you for what you and Farming to Freedom and Karen are doing.
You got it.